Good morning, everyone. On the grand scale of bumpers, this is the most aggressive bumper we've ever done in the history of Epiphany Station. And for some of you, you love it. But we are in the very last week of our teaching series that is called Shut Your Mouth. And the reason, quite frankly, as we met with the media team about it, is we really want to take an aggressive look at what it means to speak certain words. Even though they might seem idle or normal or acceptable, we wanted to take kind of a hard look at what happens when we do certain things with our words. So what we've been doing is we've been looking at all the nasty, evil, ugly ways that we can use our words. We've been talking about lies and boasting and gossip and complaining. And today we're going to talk about spitting venom. And really, I found this awesome quote that I think encapsulates this entire series and why I wanted to take 5 weeks out of the teaching calendar to take the time to focus on it. This quote starts by saying, "Indeed, we all make many mistakes. For if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect and could also control ourselves in every other way. We can make a large horse go wherever we want by means of a small bit in its mouth. And a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever we want it to go, even when the winds are strong. In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches. But a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And among all parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire." See, there's this idea that's been, around throughout history that the tongue is the most powerful part of the body because it can do more damage and more good than any other. It can profess deep and emotional love, and it can build people up and encourage and support and show compassion, but it can also tear people to shreds. And it can also spew some of the greatest amounts of nastiness and evil and hatred ever. Because the tongue is nothing more than where we express what's going on inside of us. The things that we're dealing with, the things that we're struggling with, our experiences, our beliefs, they come out and they come forward in the use of our tongue. So this entire series, we've been looking at these things, like lying and boasting, complaining and gossip, as symptoms. Not as the problem themselves and you should just stop it, but instead as symptoms and an effort to look at what's going on the inside. So what we're going to do today is probably one of the most challenging and difficult conversations in this series for me personally. As we talk about why it is that we spew, spit, and just vomit venom and evil things from our tongue, from our lips, even when we don't want to. Because there's a lot of us sat in this room, and I think most of you would agree with me, that when we do it, when we just unload and we just rail on someone, there's a little piece of us that's wondering, where did that come from? Like, it was not on my task list for the day to do that to someone and to completely just blast them to pieces with the words that come out of my mouth. Now, what I want you to do for me, just to make sure that we're all understanding who's involved in this, is I want you to raise your hand if any of these refer to you. Have you ever done this? Have you ever just kind of unloaded on someone and exploded at someone and then regretted it at a later point? Put your hand up if you have. Okay. Have you ever caused damage to a relationship in which you've had to go back and just apologize for what you've done? Have you irrevocably broken a relationship that you can never get back because of the words that have come out of your mouth? So let's just stop doing that. Okay, all right. Thanks for coming out. But here's the thing, is we do it, and we know that we do it. But so often we miss the why we do it. We get so caught up on the what we're supposed to do instead things of when we feel like that. Like when you're feeling all pent up and riled up and someone's pushing your buttons, and the question is, how are you going to respond? That's where most of the advice comes. How do you deal with your anger and your explosivity in that moment? And you get all sorts of different lines of thinking. I mean, you've got the two ends of the spectrum at that point. One is you bottle it up, right? You just don't do or say anything. Just kind of hold that in and be as Norwegian as you can be the best you can be, and just don't let that seep out at all. Now, to most of us, that seems like a pretty genuine, decent idea. until you start to look at the ramifications of that and the division that causes in relationships when we never kind of express issues and problems that we have. But also, studies will show that physically, that will kill you. For you to try and bottle everything up, basically what happens is when kind of that response is triggered and the adrenaline's flowing and something's going to happen, and you just try and cram it all in, what happens is major things happen is, one, your heart rate is massively increased and your blood pressure goes through the roof. Now, if this continues to happen, eventually it's going to lead to things like indigestion, insomnia, anxiety, but also to heart attack and stroke. If you have a habit of getting angry, getting frustrated, and the venom bubbling inside, and you just kind of holding that in, that'll kill you. So what's on the flip side of that? Is on the flip side of that, hey, just let it go. In whatever way, fashion you can, just tell people what you think, just let it spew. Well, we know that we shouldn't do that. Well, what about, kind of going into a closed room and just screaming real loud? Any screamers in the room? Just frustrated? Okay. It's all well and good till the cops get called. I actually saw on one kids' TV show that they were teaching kids that when you get angry and frustrated, you get a pillow and you just wail on it and you just punch it and count to 10. I'm like, I'm not teaching my son that, because pillow, his sister, I don't know which one he's going to choose, but the idea is you deal with it. But what's funny about that is that even in getting it out, that sort of anger and explosive venom causes damage to you too. Forget about all of the relational damage it causes. There's a study done by Washington State University recently that showed the more somebody does that in their test subjects, in their group, the more somebody has a propensity to do that, the more that they have a buildup of deposits of calcium in their heart. Now, the funny thing about that is, the more someone spews venom and just explodes and rails on people, the more that their heart is actually hardening with calcium from the inside out. And that's crazy. So here we are. We find ourselves at this point where I'm going to explode. I'm either going to hold it in and bury it down, or I'm just going to let it all out. And it's a lose-lose situation. That's why I don't want to talk about the symptom. That's why I don't want to talk about advice of what to do in the moment. I want us to take a step back and do what we've done every week and talk about the cause. What gets us to that point? We're all different experiences and different triggers and different things that make us just really want to do that. I want us to step into the why. Why some of us have a tendency to, why some of us do not. Because as with all of these messages and these conversations through this series, if we really want to control our lying, our gossip, our complaining, our boasting, or the spitting of venom, then we have to go into what is the root cause. What's going on inside of me that makes me want to do that even when I don't want to do that? And if I want to love God, if I want to love people at all, in any way, shape, or form, I want to get better at that, then we have to do something. We can't ignore it and say it's not happening, and we can't just keep on doing it, because that's not loving anyone. So we're going to explore the cause. And the cause is a peculiar one. And it's what's going to make the rest of our conversation quite difficult. Because the cause of us hurting someone, especially with our words, is actually hurt that's been caused to us. Hurting someone else is not actually a natural desire and drive within us. It is something that we have experienced. And when we have experienced hurt, we then have the tendency to regurgitate that back out. So when you're in that situation, I want you to take a moment and think about the last time that you just went for it. I mean, just no holds barred. You just spat that venom, whoever was walking by, or it was, your sibling, or your kids, or your parents, or your boss, or your colleague, or your coworker, or the Vikings. They ask for it, but still, think of that one time, that big one for you. Now think about why that happened. And don't just think about what did they do to me, or what did they do to cause that to happen to me. What I want you to think about is a much more difficult question. How was I hurt by that? So very often we want to guard ourselves from hurt that we go to such great lengths to deny and to hide it. So instead we say, I wasn't hurt, I was angry. Or I wasn't hurt, I was disrespected. But I want you to ask the question, how was I hurt by that? Because when you're willing to ask yourself that question, you're no longer relying on, oh, well, as long as that person doesn't do that to me again. Or as long as my kid doesn't disrespect me again. Or as long as my boss doesn't treat me like trash again, I'll have this under control. Because guess what? That's always going to happen. So there's going to be someone out there that doesn't treat you the way that you wish to be treated. So the question is, how can I deal with what's in me so that when I come into contact with that, I'm ready and I know how I'm going to deal with it? How am I hurt by what that person just said? What have I done that is hurting me? Is it just this hurt that I'm feeling right now, or is there a deeper hurt in my past? Because if we're willing to do that and admit that hurt exists, we can then do something about it. If you never admit that there is any hurt at all, then you can never accept and own the fact that maybe not everything's perfect in here. If you can never own the fact that you've been hurt by someone, something, an individual or an organization, then you can go through your life thinking everything is fine in here, it's just what's wrong with everybody else. And you'll never deal with this Venom issue. You see, what we want to do today is look at the fact and own it that there's something broken and fractured about us. That we've been hurt, and that if we deal with that, we can deal with the venom that comes out of us. But if we don't, then guess what? We're going to hurt other people. We're going to continue to spew venom at other people because that's the only thing that we have in here to give them when times are tough or circumstances don't suit us. Now, a real-life example of what this might look like is there's this Englishman I know. He lives in Thief River. So I decided when I was going to be a dad, I decided, like most dads, that I was going to be the best dad in the world. How many of you were going to be the best dad in the world? Like just the very, very best, top-notch dad. Okay, should have seen more hands. You guys are just honest with yourselves. I'm living in dreamland and thinking, I'm going to be that dad, you know. I don't know if there's an alternative, but like for women, it's like Pinterest mom. I don't know what the alternative is for a dad. But anyway, I was going to be awesome. And I was going to have time for my kids, and I was going to be patient with them, and I was never going to yell at them. That was one thing I decided I wasn't going to do, is I'm not going to yell at my kids because, you know, I can control that. And that really helped that by marrying a very calm wife. And she really holds me in check in no way, shape, or form. And together, we decided that we weren't going to yell, though. So it wasn't long into having kids, 1, 2, and 3. We're like, hey, we're yelling at our kids. We said we wouldn't do that. And we started talking more about it. It's like, so what is it that's going on? Because, you know, these are not bad kids. These good kids, and they do things that are naughty and they are bad or whatever. But what we figured is that in me, I was reacting disproportionately to any kind of action that they were doing. Like it was getting ridiculous. Like, you know, they leave their dirty shoes in the middle of the floor. And for me, that was just flip out time. Grab the shoes and just throw them out, pull the shotgun. No, it didn't happen, but it'd be cool if it did. But no, I was finding that I was getting really angry. And I was spitting venom at 3 of my favorite human beings on earth regularly. I was not showing them the kind of love I wanted to show them as a dad. So Jackie and I started talking more about it. And at one point, I remember, I don't know when it was, but I remember saying to her, they just don't know how good they've got it. I'd just blown up at them for something, and it must have been minor. And I just said, they just don't know how good they've got it. And Jackie said, well, that's a problem because we don't want them to know how bad it can be, right? And what we started to realize is that for me, I had some undealt with hurt. Hurt that I'd experienced when I was the kid, in which I was now bringing forward into my parenting to say, well, at least it's not as bad as what I experienced. At least they're not experiencing the type of hurt I experienced, so I can do whatever I want. It's never be as bad as that. You see, when my mom got pregnant with me, my biological dad decided that was the time to leave with his secretary and to say to my mom, you may as well get an abortion because I'm leaving. And I knew this from an early age, like I had this conversation. And I just kind of brushed it off. It's like, what a jerk. And moved on. I had never comprehended how hurt I was that I was seen as disposable by someone. By my dad. The person that's supposed to love you the most had said, get rid of him. And it wasn't until this year, through some professional counseling, that I started to dig into how that actually hurt me. And how I then looked at a lot of my friendships and my relationships as I'm abandonable. And people can ditch me whenever they want because no one really loves me and they just like me for other things. And that was affecting how I saw my kids. Because everything above me abandoning them was a bonus. Like that was the baseline. So when I blew up, that wasn't such a big deal, which it is. To dig into that and understand that I wasn't angry, I wasn't frustrated, I wasn't disrespected, I was deeply hurt. And inside of me, when I went to my little babies and my kids and I wanted to parent them, I brought with me the very thing that I did not want them ever to experience. I never want them to know what it's like to be dadless. But I brought it with me. And it impacted the way that I showed them affection. It impacted the way that I cared for them. And it wasn't until I brought that up and brought that to light that we could start dealing with it. And I could say, I'm hurt. I'm not hurt by the shoes on the floor. I'm not hurt by the back talk. I'm hurt because someone a long time ago said that I was worth nothing and killable. And I was never going to deal with that. And I was thinking I could just move past it and move beyond it because I'm a Yorkshireman, and Yorkshiremen don't have feelings. We're literally made of granite, so we can just move past these kind of things. But you can't. If you really want to love people, you can't not own that you get hurt. You can't stuff it down. You can't take the venom that other people spew at you, hold on to it, and expect never for it to overflow onto other people. So I've decided that I want to love my kids better than ever. And that means digging into the crap that was my childhood. And for some of us, it has to start there. If we want to love God, if we want to love people, are we willing to deal with the fact that we're hurt? That we've been hurt by something, that we've been hurt by someone, and that's not okay. And that we don't have to hold on to it. And that we don't have to take it into every relationship we now ever have. It doesn't have to be the reason that we have divorces and broken homes and relationship after relationship after relationship that never goes anywhere. One of the things that God came to do when he stepped into human history time and time again, one of the major things he came to do was to let people know it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to admit that you're hurt. It's okay to admit that you're broken. It's okay to admit that you're sick. Because that's the whole purpose of him sending Jesus Christ. It's the whole purpose of church, the mission of the church, the whole purpose of him coming in the first place, the whole purpose of Easter was him to declare to the world, this world sucks and it will hurt you. But this is not all there is. And there is a God so much great and so much loving for you to have a relationship with that can heal and take away all that crap. So we've got next steps for today. Things that I want you to do. If you want to, if you're willing to, start processing and dealing with any kind of hurt that you have that might be causing you to spit and spew venom on others, that might be hindering your desire or ability to love God and love people, I want you to do these. And I want you to own them. The first is to admit the hurt. First, you've got to admit it to yourself. You've got to be willing to admit that it's not perfect in here. The things aren't exactly as they should be. This isn't heaven yet. And because of that, I've got stuff that hurts. And it's not to own up to that so we can start pointing the finger at people and say, this is how you've hurt me. It's so we can move on. Because when Jesus came, he said, look, it's out of that sickness that all of your brokenness pours out. All of the ugliness and all that dark side of you and all that sinfulness, that's going to come out of the things that have been done and you've experienced. At one time, he was actually chastised and basically called out and chewed out by those who thought they were unhurt, the perfect, the well put together. And they said, why are you hanging around with such scum? Why are you hanging around with the broken and the hurt and the sinful and those who are spitting and spewing venom, those who are lying and boasting and cheating and complaining? And Jesus' response is beautiful. Some of the most beautiful words you'll find recorded in history. In Mark 2:17, he said, healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. I've come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they're sinners. That it's okay for us to own it. That we're not perfect. And one of the reasons that we're not perfect is because of the hurt that we hold onto. And all of the sin and all of the hurt pours out of that. Some hurt that was done, something that was broken. And first you've got to be able to admit to yourself that it's real. That's no easy thing to do. You might do it today, you might do it never because of how difficult it is. But then what you've got to be willing and able to do is to admit it to others. The healing process of being able to deal with the fact that you're hurt is to be able to communicate that to another person. And it's twofold. The first is to be able to say to them, look, I am in pain and I need help. I am hurt and I need healing. And the second, once you admit that, is you start to understand that you're not alone. A lot of us, when we feel hurt or talk about hurt, we feel like we're the only person in the world that's ever experienced it. No one can understand what I've been through. No one can understand what's been done to me, how I've been treated. So we bottle it. And we never let it out. And the idea that we could admit that to others is start of the process to be able to get dealt with what is sitting within us. Galatians 6:2-3 says that we're to share each other's burdens. And in this way, you actually obey the law of Christ. Like the whole thing Jesus came to do was like, I want you to share it together. All the hurt that you've got, I want you to be willing to talk to someone else about that and listen to them. To share the fact that there are things going on in their life that they need help with. And for you to talk to them about the things that you need help with. This is why we do things like our small groups that meet throughout the week to talk about the weekend's message. It's why we do our recovery ministries. Millie, our head of recovery, is launching Celebrate Recovery again May 16th of this year. Because it is such a huge need in our community for people to go somewhere to be able to say, I'm not doing okay. That's why Epiphany Station exists. Where people feel comfortable and welcome to not have to put on a face and a mask and dress up nice and say everything's fine. But you can come and just own the fact that it's not. But there's an answer. When we're willing to do that and start doing that, we can then actually deal with the problem. No longer just going around the houses in circles and circles dealing with the symptom. We can deal with the cause. And the way that we deal with the cause is we get healing. The second step is to heal the hurt. It's to get it dealt with, to be done with. You know, whenever there's any kind of healing to be done, like in your everyday life, the first part of it is admitting that it hurts. Now, you can walk as best you can down the street with a broken leg, but everyone else knows it's broken. And your eyeball can like be gouged out by something and hanging off your cheek. And you can not admit it. But you don't get any help that way. And what it takes, the courage that it takes, is to say, yeah, I'm broken, but I want something to be done about it. If we're willing to admit it, then we can go where we need to go to have it dealt with. So one of my favorite examples of this comes from a time in which the whole people of God, like all of them, every single person that God wanted a relationship with, had basically turned their back on him and just said, look, I don't want any more of it. I don't trust you. I don't want a relationship with you. And they were just spitting and spewing all of the venom that they held at him. And there came a point in which God spoke through a guy and said, hey, this is what I'm going to do in the future. If you're willing to relent from what you're currently doing, you're willing to step back into a relationship, but this is what I'm going to do to you. In Ezekiel 36:26, he says, I'm going to give you a new heart. I'm going to put a new spirit in you. I'm going to take out your stony, calcified, stubborn heart and give you a tender, responsive heart. Basically, what God is saying is the promise that he's given is if you're willing to hand over all of the venom, all of the hurt, all of the hardness of the heart that's been caused, he'll give you a new one. He'll take away the thing that is cutting you to shreds, and he'll give you a new one. So the hurt that has been done to you, the hurt that you hold on to, that now causes you to want to lie about stuff, like you feel like you can't be truthful with people, you feel like you have to get away with something, he'll heal you of that. The hurt that you've got and you hold on to that makes you feel like you have to boast, or that you have to complain, or that you have to tear others down with gossip, he'll take that away. The hurt that you have and the venom that you've got that makes you have to spew that on other people in response and reacting to them, he'll get rid of that. And the hurt that we have that makes us feel unlovable and abandonable and discardable and unforgivable, those are the very things that he has been working throughout history and through your entire life to let you know that you don't have to have that. That is not yours to carry. And he will take every last drop of venom out of you if we will hand it over, if we will ask him to do that. That is what he does. That is what he promises. You might have seen it in other people, complete turnaround, life change. You might have experienced it in your past in other ways. But the moment that we forget that our God is a healer, we forget and we lose all avenues of healing. Because God is not just about getting you to heaven. A relationship with God is about him bringing pieces of heaven to you. And doing things so miraculous that people will be phenomenally astounded by what he has done with your heart. That's what he wants to do with every single person. So what I'm going to do here in a second is I'm going to lead us in a word of prayer. And I don't even want you to listen to me. I'm going to pray for me and I'm going to pray for you. I want you to be thinking about your hurt. Like I said, this doesn't make it's an easy conversation, but I want you to think about the things that have had a hold of you for so long, the things that make you want to lie and boast and gossip and all the things that make you spew venom. I want you to think about that, and I want you to be bold and own it. I want you to man up, woman up, and actually own the fact that you hurt, and I want you to put God to the test and see if he will do something about it for you. By owning that you need it, by owning that you are broken, by owning that you need forgiveness for what you've done because of it, because you need him, ask him to do something about it. And I want you to do that throughout your life, because if we're going to do any better at loving God, if we're going to do any better at loving people, it's going to have to start with what's in my heart. And if all I've got is ugliness, that's all I've got for him and others. And he wants to change that. You guys, please pray with me. Father God, we thank you that you are a God of healing. And it's not just the physical, but it's things that we hold on to and it's hurts that we have from this morning, from 30 years ago, that have a hold and that have been doing damage and that have been poisoning us. We don't want it anymore. I want you to reveal it to us. I want you to know no matter how hard, no matter how difficult it is, how painful it is, for you to be willing to take us on the first steps of recovery by showing us our hurt. And don't let us medicate. Don't let us push it away. Don't let us distract ourselves from it. Because we want a tender heart. We want to be compassionate. We want to be loving. We want a new one. We want to be different. We want to see change. So we want you to help us in the first steps and in the last steps to see that happen and to fulfill your promise of making us new people. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. The third